All right, so what I'm doing is a discussion on excuse me, Spike Lee's The Five Bloods. Yeah. And this is Juneteenth inspired. Yeah. For just for the one time. Though I mean this is thoughts that are relative to things aside from Juneteenth specifically. But just in general. Because this movie was about okay. I have been seeing and hearing some people saying that they didn't enjoy the movie all that much or something. It wasn't all that good by Spike Lee. It was slow to start the movie. It was a bit slow. I started watching the movie and probably got like 30 minutes in and stopped, and then came back to it a few days later. I just finished watching it earlier this afternoon. Um, but it's a good movie. It's well done. It starts a little slow, but once it gets going and you understand what it is that they're doing, um, it sets certain expectations that you would expect, given that circumstance. Um, these people, the synopsis, these people, some black soldiers, Vietnam War veterans, are going back to Vietnam to recover the dead the remains of their fallen leader who died, who was a part of their crew and died, and to recover some gold that was left there, that they hid there. um you know, a treasure. And so that sounds like fun, you know. But as you would expect with Spike Lee, it brings up so many revolutionary, black revolutionary ideas that come along with African American experience, and relating this tale to the African American experience. Um, the entire time while the black soldiers were in America. I mean, you in the movie you see the Vietnam radio DJs was playing Marvin Gaye and saying, you know, take it easy to the black people. Their last words were be safe and whatever. Later came thank you for your sacrifice so much. But And so, yeah, it took me a while. I was probably at least 45 minutes into the movie before I even started taking notes. Because I didn't realize what exactly was going on. You could tell that there was some racial tensions there, but um, which would be expected of the circumstances and where the thing took place. Uh, you know, um, just for starters. But I got a couple. I got pages of notes over here. I'm just trying to take my time of getting it through it. But the movie has some racial tensions between blacks and Asians. But I will say we must remember with the entire experience of the movie is meant to be something of a healing story. It's meant to be a story about healing, a movie about healing. It's a spiritual journey. It embodies the spiritual journey of the fallen hero. Um, and our desire to do right by our fallen leaders. You know, whether it be Martin and Malcolm, who are mentioned in the movie. Not Malcolm, I don't believe, but Martin most definitely is mentioned. And other fallen leaders that came before them, and it that outright makes me think about like Bob Marley, and he was a leader of ours that fell. He wasn't. He was attempted to assassinate him, but he did not die to that. That not what caused his passing. But he you know, even but Bob Marley and his song Redemption Song, won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? and everything like that. So it seems like these soldiers, as they called themselves when it was the five of them all together, alive in the past, the Five Bloods. Um, and before we even get to the revolutionary aspect of this, let us not forget how cool this is. The title is The Five Bloods, which is meant to enlighten this story of these soldiers going back for the remains of their fallen leader. Their desire to do right by their fallen leader. The name of this movie being The Five Bloods likens this story of soldiers and comrades to a story of gang members in any neighborhood, any how gang supposed to go. Um, One thing that sticks out, and I would say a friend of mine was just telling me it made her it confused at the beginning. Many times as the telling through the telling of the story, it goes from the things happening in the present day, which when I say present day is like this year, even because they got MAGA hats on. One of the characters wears a MAGA hat, and it's like so. It's essentially, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal in the movie and in the entire plot. Um, but these people, these are soldiers that are going back from to for unfinished business from 50 years ago. Um, and you got to think about this. It is portrayed different. Some of the openings of the movie are portrayed in somewhat complex in ways, but you got to think about Spike Lee. And Spike Lee been making movies for a long time. And he's been making movies about these kind of subject matters for a long time. At first, it doesn't exactly seem like it is the subject matter that he would, but it's like no, it's very much Spike Lee's kind of subject matter that he would be talking about, and the story of these people and how important this story is to our culture is speaking things from a grandfather that many of us never had. It's telling the story of a grandfather that many of us never had, whether they played many different roles of these five different brothers in this story. Um, and so, it's a big story of black masculinity that we haven't gotten. It's been taken from us due to what Bob Marley say, won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? Pirates, they rob I, stole us from the merchant ships. Uh, we was held captive. It's like this is an entire story of the black man going to the war. Is the black man getting caught up in fighting for some freedom? We thought that we would fight that. They thought. I mean, not we because I wasn't there, but our grandfathers thought that they were fighting that war and as a means to ensure that they would get some equality, some freedom, and such. But they weren't given that. They were given what you know everything that I mean, the movie shows the paranoia, the psychosis disease that they had and whatnot. But you know, it we mistreat our war veterans and treat them very poorly. Just in general, but black guys. I mean, let us not. Somebody said at the end, white guy said that the struggle of the black person, the pain of the black person isn't any worse of a pain. you know, uh, as one of the other person said, touche. But in a movie, the Asian guy said it was like touche, but it's different parts. But you know, this is still black people who left with inequality, nothing and went there, became malignated, um, m- caught this sickness, malignance. They use this, um, they caught the sickness and they had to come back to steal nothing. And that is a very important story, necessary story that a lot of people need to acknowledge. There's reasons why your grandfathers, you see these people, these broken people on corners and stuff. And if you know them, or or not, or wherever they may be. But there's reasons why some of these people are like that, and we look at them and treat them this way, and no man, I ain't give you no check, whatever. But there's reasons why these people are in those situations. But I will say, I'm paying more homage. Spike Lee. It's a movie, and it's a good movie. It talks also about the racial losses of the Vietnamese people at this time. Also, um, some of the other thoughts I wrote down. Well, okay, I will say one thing about this movie, especially in the later parts when it kind of breaks into being fluid. It was one thing. Spike does certain things where he does his whole face shot and even profile, even probably from the sides, even. But and the talking of the faces, going into the mind of the person, whoever it was that was doing speaking. He did those that, and I will say to us, he created a way that it looked fluid, fluidly leading in. It was a psychosis, so somebody talking so poetically and artistically, um, it fit. But it was like to a certain extent, it's like the first time ever Spike Lee speaking poetically works. It fits organically. Any other time, he got like stark drasticness and things. But and you got to think about that with this interpreting this movie, because think about Spike Lee. He's always, you gotta watch Spike Lee movies with the subtitles on, because they's about like a poem. Anyways, like you just got to pay attention to the words that he's using and not using. Um, and so it's like but he's used to such vibrant colors. If you think back to school days, even Do the Right Thing, Jungle Fever. I mean, he's always using such loud characters, not loud as in vocally loud, but they are always strong, dynamic characters that even to a certain extent even become stereotypes, archetypes, and to a certain extent stereotypes, even very racial stereotypes. And to a certain, these characters in this movie, each of these brothers become stereotypes of if symbolic of different concepts of masculinity, African American masculinity, different angles on the truth, because so much of this is the spiritual nature of this. The fallen Storm and Norman. What saddens me, I'm not even getting into some of my notes yet, but what saddens me about Storm and Norman, for one, he's just played by the same actor as who played James Brown and the Black Panther, and he's the fallen hero. There's levels of symbolism in just that before you even watch the movie. But um I'm a sip some for Stormy. He was their hero, their leader. That what frustrates me is like Storm and Norman could have been Martin Luther King, Malcolm X themselves. Um, Not like them. If he would have lived long enough, these was young. He had the spirit. He was their spiritual pharaoh. He was their spiritual leader in there, and whatnot. There, if Stormin said right, then we following Stormin. He's the leader, and all, and he was taken from them. But how many he actually died in the war? Um, how many black soldiers that actually did die in the war could have truly been a Martin, Malcolm and everything. Like, and there are those many deaths, just like Martin and Malcolm. I mean, let those be, because they was. I mean, who and the possibilities. So all that we have to remember of our fallen soldiers was that they were Martin and Malcolm. And I did write down a thing, a bit about the movie is about the desire to do right by our fallen soldiers. Maybe we didn't do enough for them in their living. By our fallen leaders, maybe we didn't do enough for them in their living. And so it's like, to a certain extent, an eternal uh, apology that we truly do by paying dues to the struggle and the revolution and whatnot. But when you are a real soldier and had to live with the things that happen in the movie, um, is different. And some of these people died. Some of the five died. And I will say, not to be too, not to spoil too much of it. Excuse me. But certain times when Paul, a brother with the MAGA hat, black male with the MAGA hat, he he was a very it played by Delroy Lindo. And the funny thing, you see Delroy Lindo. I've seen Delroy Lindo play movies all my life. Man, I'm 32. So it's like he has always been a dad character, even. Um, but to see him, and he's played some powerfully black power revolutionary volatile roles before. But to see him doing this, wearing the MAGA hat like hardcore, at certain times his character is viewed as as a violent person, um, volatile. Most definitely, he somewhat becomes a antagonist to the rest of the events and the people of the story. But what he does about Paul, he becomes the spirit. He becomes the spirit of the African American man who has taken on the sickness of America. He became misguided. He wanted to follow so hard, but our leader died. And so he couldn't follow his blackness, but he was so inspired by Storming that he was had to keep on pushing forward. And so he couldn't reconnect to the strength and passion, the mental forwardness of blackness. So we had to connect to the strength and passion and the truly mental backwardness and lack of evolution that comes with American whiteness. And so he put on that hat and became so misguided from where he was going. But regardless of our fallen fathers who did not make the who did not successfully make the transition, the connection between where the movement was going then and where you know the missteps of our culture that we are still dealing with now. Sometimes we might feel like they led us astray. We feel that way sometimes, but it's the story about that. Even when you feel like, he had a moment, his son became against him. The black Republican people, think about it. Spike Lee's like, think about it. The black Republican who's trying to, as he quoted, what he said, I wrote it down because he said, "You're not gonna get me." He said, they ain't snatching my gold bars, bars at that, my gold prison. But that so much of this, the fact that they're going for searching for gold becomes a spiritual story because gold. How old is the pursuit of gold? Timeless. That's the truth. But and he was saying, but he kept saying, "You will not kill Paul. You will not kill Paul." Like Paul is not dead. Paul became the spirit of the American ghost, the African American ghost that haunt, that like the soul. How many black soldiers died on that continent? Like how much music that could have been? How many different bands those people could have been? So that's hundreds of soul bands, artists, Prince, Jimi Hendrix's, Muhammad Ali's, and who actually went to the war and feel that they were misguided. They didn't want, that was the war we shouldn't have been in. America shouldn't have been in. The black people shouldn't have been in. And so it's like sometimes the black Republican, we may look at them and be like, "Why you feel that way?" But they trying so hard to cling to something, and he's like, understand that, understand that he's trying to do something, and he grew up from the right on era, right on. He's like, man, I'm just trying to get it right, man, trying to do it right, and he had to this entire pursuit of Americanism made his son hate him. Like he said, you turned my own son against me. Like this entire thing of trying to stay true, trying to stay, connected to your ideals and such. I mean, how many black Republicans, imagine a black Republican father and his children don't like him because the millennials, no, we not with that shit no more. Fuck them. But, you know, um, the wild shit I will say, Paul with the MAGA hat was so passionate and so adamantly even trying to defend his family and himself and his blackness. He was spazzing out. He was accusing other people of being some dope fiends or something. He was spazzing out, back to saying like he was a dope fiend. And other people in the movie had played different roles. You've seen them before. I will say it was interesting to watch the end of the movie because the names of the actors, one of them actually named Norm. Like it's a real moment, and the movie is and Paul is even so hard clings to his black identity and black intelligence even because of the fact that he went to that his son went to Morehouse, and the entire time his son Spike Lee did that on purpose. By having walking around here with a fucking Morehouse on his shirt, like HBCU, and so much of this was the words was aptly chosen because there was a moment when the son was given into the manipulation and seduction of the white woman, um, and the father was chastising him for it, and he said something like, "Your dear mother would be ashamed of you," and that made me think of dear mama, like yo mama, like he was essentially going against his own blackness. I mean, you know, does that happen, people? Does that truly happen in American households? Of I mean, shit. Because some of the things about love that this kind of speaks to is ideas of interrelation racialism. When certain times some people fall, they I think of Paul's character. Imagine him somewhat like a black Republican, a MAGA hat black person, but also think of how alike Paul is to Soul Brother number one in his passion and adamancy of the race itself. And yeah, um, because the fucked up shit is Paul does all that he's doing in pursuit of trying to get this gold back and trying to do, and then he ends up not getting his gold. And he says moments, the symbolism where he says, God, you're a trickster. And then that's after he's falling down He's doing all this stuff trying to in pursuit of gold. Like Paul wants to go so far, but has missed a step and has missed the heart and soul of it. And it's just like, what can we do to help them? Those fathers that missed it, you know. Um, they son for Paul too, cause he's fighting. I mean, whether that be Soul Brother number one, as in Gil Scott Heron, or whether that be, I mean, anybody who was fighting their different fights, wherever they was be. Um, it could have been. Dang, I had a point. As I said, like yeah, Paul is black bag of hat, black man wearing MAGA hat, but also Gil Scott Heron, Soul Brother number one black. Um, and there's connections between that. But yeah, and people, there's so much symbolism in the movie. People getting triggered by the mines in the field. Like they didn't know it was there, but it was already there. Asian black people and Asian people getting triggered by the mines in the field. And there's mines in the field, and we got to be ready to accept them. We got to be willing and ready to dodge them because history has left problems for us to deal with. And furthermore, about the flashbacks, um, whenever the team flashback, the only person who was young in the flashback was Storm and Norman, who had died in the war in the past. He was still young because he died young. The rest of them, and it was in flashbacks, and sometimes when the flashbacks would lead over into the current life, they would be their older selves in the war, in the flashbacks and whatnot. But I will say the last bit about this is a bit of a testament to peace, because as they grew older, they was always still in the war. They were still in the same war now as they were then. They didn't be able to look back at their younger selves. They were still themselves right now and right then. Um, and so, if you have a perspective that is, removed from and not polluted by uh, war and negativity or whatnot, if you have a perspective that is not polluted by war, be thankful for that. The ones who didn't go to war, who won't go to war, who haven't, you know, be thankful for not having to go to war, and especially a fighting a war that is not yours to fight in. But also be thankful for those who sacrificed themselves in pursuit of peace, that same peace. Um, I was about to close, but I think I got some more notes that I hadn't mentioned yet. Well, let's start this one.